Math Minute 47. You guys need to fill out this sheet while you're listening to me go through it. And then after you're done filling it out, you go ahead and turn it in. Number 1 says, using the numbers 1 through 6, fill in the blanks to create the smallest number possible. So I'm using the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if I want to make the smallest number possible, I'm just going to start with the smallest number and then take the next smallest number and the next number and so on. So I would go in that order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the smallest number I could make with the numbers 1 through 6 would be 1,234.56 would be the smallest number. Number 2 says fill in the missing number in the factor tree. So what this is showing here is something called prime factorization, which means that we are breaking numbers down until we have all prime numbers left. So for 30, they broke that down into 5 and 6 because 5 times 6 is 30. 5 is a prime number, so you can't break that down any further. But 6, we could break down into 2 times 3. This 2 times 3 is 6. So now I have all prime numbers left, 5, 2, and 3. So if I were to multiply those, 5 times 2 times 3, if I multiplied those together, I would get 30, which is what I wanted because 30 is the top number there. So that process that we just did there was called prime factorization. It's breaking numbers down until we have all prime numbers left. And then if you multiplied those prime numbers together, you would get the number that you started with. Is 34.82 closer to 34 or 35? So this would be rounding to the nearest whole number. So I got 34.82. And I'm rounding to the nearest whole number, which in this case is the 4. So remember the rule when we're rounding is we look at the number to the right, and in this case the number to the right of the 4 is an 8. And the rule is if this number to the right of the number that we've identified as the number that's either going to stay the same or we're going to round it up 1. If it's a 5 or higher, which in this case it is, it's an 8, that 4 is going to become a 5. So I would round this to 35. Now, if this number here, this 8, if that were a 4 or less, then this 4 that I underlined here, that would have stayed a 4. So if that number were a 4 or less, and I rounded to the nearest whole number, that would be 34. But in this case, the number that was to the right was an 8, and because that was 5 or higher, that 4 went up to a 5. So that's why we would say that 34.82 is closer to 35 than it is 34. Number 4, we have 8 hundredths plus 9 hundredths equals. So now I need to know how to write 8 hundredths. So 8 hundredths would be 0.08 because that 8 is in the hundredths place. So that's why I know that I need to write that as 0.08 because that 8 has to go in the hundredths place. And then I'm going to add 9 hundredths. So that would be 0.09 because that 9 is in the hundredths place. So now I'm just going to add them together. 8 plus 9 is 17, so 7 goes there, 1 goes up there. 1 plus 0 is going to be 1. And then bring my decimal point down. So 800ths plus 900ths would be 0.17, or 1700ths, I would call that. Number 5, we got 1/2 plus 0.2. So what I want to do with this one is I want to convert that 1/2 into a decimal. And we've been talking about, to convert a fraction to a decimal, you divide. So I'm going to do 1 divided by 2. And if I did that on my calculator, I would get 0.5. So now that I have these both in decimal form, which is what I want. So now I can just add those together. So really what I could do is I could just add 0.2 to this 0.5. 5 plus 2 is 7. Bring down the decimal point. 0 plus 0 is 0. So my answer would be 0.7 for that one. Number 6, I got 20.4% plus 20.5% plus 4.1%. Well, these are all percentages, so I can just add them up. And I'm going to stack them vertically since I have decimals in there. So I'm going to go 20.4 plus 20.5 plus 4.1. Remember, the decimal points have to line up. So now I can just use basic addition to add this up. So I'm going to start on the right side. 4 plus 5 is 9. 9 plus 1 is 10. And I go 1 plus 0 is 1, plus 0 is 1, plus 4 is 5. 2 plus 2 is 4. And then I bring down my decimal point. So when I add these together, I would get 45%. For numbers 7 and 8, it says use the circle graph to the right. What percent of the votes did candidate A receive? So whenever you're looking at a circle graph like this and you're talking about percentages, the whole circle would equal 100%. So if I'm missing a section here, like section A, I'm just going to subtract the other percentages that it gives me to figure out what the missing percentage is. So for this one, I would go 100 minus 50 minus 20. And that's going to be my missing percentage. So in this case, 100 minus 50 is 50. 50 minus 20 is 30. So my missing percentage, or section A, is going to be 30%. And I know that's correct because if I added 30, 20, and 50, I would get 100%, which is what I need. Number 8, if candidates A and C combine their votes, they would have blank than candidate B. So now that I know that A received 30%, so it says if I combined A and C, so A and C would be 20 plus 30, which would be 50. And now they said, how does that compare to B? Well, B also had 50%. So they would have the same percentage. So we're going to say the same as candidate B. All right, number 9, this is what we were working on yesterday when we were multiplying by 10, 100, and 1,000. And the rule is, you look at how many zeros there are. So in 10, there's 1 0. So that tells me I'm just going to move my decimal point one place to the right. So now this would become 9.8. So I don't even need a calculator for these. 100 has 2 zeros in it. So that means I'm going to move my decimal point 2 places to the right. This would become 98. And then 1,000 has 3 zeros in it, so I'm going to move my decimal point 3 spots. And now I have an open spot in there. And whenever I have an open spot, I put a 0 in there. So this would become 980. So that is the rule when we're multiplying by multiples of 10. And then for number 10, we are converting fractions to percentages. So remember the rule when we're converting fractions to percentages is we divide and then we multiply by 100. So I'm going to write that down here. We divide, then multiply by 100. So the first one here, I'm going to do 5 divided by 100 times 100. And if I did that, I would get 5. If I did it on the calculator, 5%. Then this one, I would do 15 divided by 100 times 100. If I did that on the calculator, I would get 15%. And then this one, I would do 85 divided by 100 times 100, and I would get 85%. So the most important thing there is that you understand that the rule for changing a fraction into a percentage is you divide and then you multiply by 100. So go ahead and turn that into the assignment folder for this assignment, and then I put a IXL assignment for you guys to do after this. So have a good weekend, and I will see you guys on Monday.